Anna Danylchuk has been creating a war diary since the early days of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia in 2022. And of course, this conversation comes on the second anniversary, the terrible second anniversary that no one really wanted to see. And we thought it would be incredibly appropriate to have one of our long rambling conversations, but to really drill into what has happened over 2 years, but also what needs to happen now in order for Ukraine to be victorious. Anna Danylchuk aims to tell the truth about Ukraine and Russia's war and cut through the noise and propaganda. Anna is passionate about the beauty and independence of her country, and if any of you have seen her videos, you will know that she communicates this extremely powerfully in a clear and honest way. Anna, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Happy to be with you and your beautiful community.
Well, so much has happened, and the majority of the conversation hopefully will be about Ukraine, but we can't help to just touch on two fairly big things that have happened. But maybe we'll come to those later. Let's start with the extraordinary successes of Ukraine first, just to change the normal media dynamic here. The number of Russian fighters that have been shot out of the sky in the last week is absolutely incredible. And yet, of course, it's been overshadowed by the other events that we're going to come to in a minute. The other thing is the sinking of the, I think it was Caesar something or other. Anyway, it was a Russian landing ship, another large Black Sea Fleet ship promoted to a submarine. These are extraordinary Ukrainian successes.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you so much for highlighting Ukrainian success because during a year already, we feel that this excitement about the strength, resilience, and actually capability of Ukrainian army has become our normal. And Russia spends millions, billions of dollars and lots of effort to change the narrative and to switch these focuses and to try and just like hide these achievements. And they don't have any Russian achievements, but they try to demonstrate, oh, it's exhausting, it's tiresome, it's complicated, when on contrary, we can actually see that Ukraine, not a naval country, unfortunately, managed to destroy two-thirds of Russian Black Sea fleet, which is huge, taking into account that we don't have our fleet and that we don't have aviation the way we need it. So this is great. And Russians had to escape from the Black Sea back to the Russian ports where they belong, which is beautiful. And during this week, we have downed 7 of their aircraft, Su-34, Su-35, that they use to bomb Ukrainian front lines and to cause lots of problems for the protection or further movement of Ukrainian counteroffensive. And I even joked on my channel that, like, an aircraft a day keeps Russia away, you know, and like every day, if we can say it, 7 aircrafts in a week, that's a lot. And this demonstrates the creativity of Ukraine using very limited resources. And unfortunately, I am honest now with my viewers, and I'm honest with your viewers, this lack of ammunition is felt already. So it's not in conversations, it is not in quarrels, it is not in the future, it is now. And with this limited resources, using air defense, playing tricks, making Russians fly deeper inside Ukraine, risking our lives, we're able to do that. So I think, taking into account the size of Russia, taking into account the size of ammunition that they have since the USSR, taking into account decades of de-armament of Ukraine that was encouraged by all the democratic world, and it was not a bad idea if Russia was a normal country. But it is not. And taking all of that into account, and also how long we wait for the supplies, all the normal democratic bureaucracy, and fast and effective cooperation of dictatorships. When Putin asks for 1 million artillery supplies and he gets them the next week from North Korea. I'm not saying it's good, but it is their reality. So taking into account this context, I think you can invest in Ukraine, and actually you should. I'm sorry, but once again, marking this second year of full-scale Russian invasion, I don't have other choice but to be like open and very honest about how we feel.
And it's worth pointing out here, I think, that when the war started, it's very much seen as unfortunately seen as a regional conflict. I think if you're looking at it from the sort of rather myopic, geopolitical expert point of view, now we're 2 years in, Ukraine is fighting an alliance of Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China. And yet the West still does not seem to understand that this is a sort of mini World War III. I mean, not to exaggerate here, Ukraine is fighting an alliance of the world's most dictatorial regimes.
Thank you, Jonathan, for this question and for the understanding. And I'm grateful that there are some voices on YouTube and in global media that start saying it, that we obviously realize it is not a local conflict. It is not about the money or aquatorium of the Black Sea or something else. It is the clash between the democratic world and that can be extinct. Unfortunately, nobody promised us that democracy is the final stage of every country, and very effective and very cooperative authoritarian regimes that see it as a chance. And I think everybody sane understands that, but many leaders still choose an option to, I don't know, take a break, wait and see. And of course, I do understand that it is easier to close your eyes and to try and persuade yourself that this is a local problem. Ukraine was not good, was not perfect. What I also notice is that Russians try to bring lots of messages in the media saying that, well, Ukraine is not that good. Maybe they don't have a good taxation system, or look, the mobilization has some troubles, or borders and farmers and other stuff. I am not saying we are perfect, but we are a safe and normal country with which you could live, continue living normally for centuries. We're not perfect if you look deeply into the United Kingdom, into France, into Slovenia. You will find lots of problems, just like when you look into your wife or your husband or your children. But uh, we act normal. We are not a threat to the world. And what Russia does, it tries to give this argument like, well, you're trying to save Ukraine, but Ukraine isn't that good. But even if we are not that good, Russia is evil. Russia is guilty of killing hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, of children, destroying 1/3 of my country, committing global war crimes, and threatening others. So it's not about me being, it's just like someone kills your neighbor and you say, well, that's okay. I did not call the police because I never liked their dog. It's uncomparable. And unfortunately, these authoritarian regimes, they demonstrate very effective and very quick cooperation. Of course, they are not friends, they will eat each other, but it may be that they will eat each other a couple of centuries later after none of the democratic countries survive. And it's vital for us to start protecting and feeling that it is a civil war. That's why at least, I mean that it's a world war, and we don't have to be afraid, that's what I meant to say, of a civil war in Russia, because at this moment, Russia is already at war with the world, at war with all countries, and it names lots of countries that protect democracy as the ones that threaten it. And that's why the efforts, they have to be united, and it's not alone or a goodwill. Unfortunately, it's an investment. And of course, I never wanted this war to take place on the territory of my country, because every day it destroys, spoils, ruins ecology, everything. But we don't have this choice, and you'd better choose to finish it here, not bring it elsewhere.
And one of the things you mentioned there is the sort of classic Russian propaganda technique, which is, and then this is the one they try when everything else has failed. That is, we're really bad, but you're no better than us, and everything is just the same. We heard that propaganda line from Tucker Carlson when he was being interviewed after his car crash of a so-called interview with Putin. He was asked, why didn't you say this? Why didn't you tackle certain topics about the assassination of Politkovskaya, Nemtsov, and of course Navalny? And he said simply, every leader kills. Every leader does this. There's no difference at all. It's a classic Russian propaganda piece. And it's the normalization behind that that I find most shocking. If someone were to go on any Ukrainian street with a picture of Zelenskyy and say, I hate this guy, blah, 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 people would look at them and go, yeah, okay, whatever. He's a bit odd, but, get on with it. We see that if you do that, if you even hold up a blank piece of paper in a Russian city, you'll be arrested. And if you're lucky, you won't be beaten or killed or worse. Well, not worse than killed. If you're lucky, you will escape without something truly appalling happening to you. Could you comment then? I mean, I want to tackle the whole Tucker Carlson bit from a slightly different angle than we see in a lot of the media. This normalization technique, why do so many people fall for it?
Well, I think the problem is that many people lack knowledge about a particular part of the world or a particular history. But unfortunately, they are very enthusiastic to express their opinions, and they are not willing to learn. We fight with a very old and toxic monster, because messages that Russian propaganda uses now were inherited from the Soviet Union, and Soviet Union borrowed many of them from the Russian Empire. And as a result, we have lots of people, as Russians like to say, in the West, who grew up on these messages. Their parents, great parents knew it, and they take it as truth because they did not know any other version of reality. And they check it not with Ukrainians, not with Poles, not with Lithuanians, but with, like, even my grandma knew that. I don't know, Odessa is. And that's a problem. Also, like we often speak about this media literacy, it's a topic of many courses, universities, but many people still do not take it that seriously. And war taught Ukrainians, it's vital. Because if you start sharing, for example, the position of your army or the place where the missile hit, uh, you may receive another portion of death on that side. And we learned really quickly. And I think that now an average Ukrainian is more media literate than its counterpart in the majority of EU countries. And what I see with Tucker Carlson is a great manipulation of public opinion when they say, like, we have to listen to the both sides. And then I was very grateful that newspapers like The Guardian, they came out with articles claiming that we have tons of journalists and reporters who dream, who are ready to travel, I don't know, on a bicycle from London to interview Putin in Moscow or wherever they say. But these are real journalists who will ask uncomfortable questions, and they don't have a chance to get a permission to visit this dying bunker dictator. And they only allow those who will ask comfortable questions, because you've mentioned no questions about Politkovskaya, Navalny, and I have this question that would be number one. How do you feel about the enlargement of NATO borders to Finland and Sweden when you started this special military operation with a fake idea to stop NATO from spreading closer? You've got just the country. Do you feel you've lost the war? Because if that was the reason for a war. But no such questions. Why? Because they knew he's, in Ukraine we say like domestic, like a domestic pet, like it was predictable.
It's
So
house
no,
trained. Yeah.
yeah, house trained, like. And so what's phenomenal, and people have to understand. So no, of course it's important to listen to the two sides, but it is not the real thing. And what can you ask a question, um, like a person who is guilty for the deaths of people in Bucha and Mariupol, daily targeting Ukrainian schools, hospitals. And you know what I am also a little bit afraid of is that once again, Putin and his propagandists, they use democracy to ruin democracy. The world, the Western world lived in this normal, more or less healthy environment, psychologically comfortable for a very long period of time, and people have become very tolerant and they have much respect to various different points of view, opinions, and so on. And when you take someone hyper tolerant and you ask that hyper tolerant person, for example, to speak with Hitler, if it would be possible, I'm very much afraid that very tolerant person will find like the reasons to explain. We should not play with these things because I've heard about this, like serial killers in some of the Scandinavian prisons who claim they suffer too much after killing like dozens of people. And there are citizens who feel, oh, bad for this. But come on, these are people guilty. Putin is guilty for killing lots of these beautiful children, innocent children, ruining life, ruining infrastructure, killing animals, like everything that you so much hate in your beautiful, tolerant societies. And then you start playing with this psychology. What if, what then? No, 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 no. That's a crime and a sin too.
And I think the scale, the sheer scale of the destruction and ruination is not something people have really wrapped their heads around. So a couple of my recent interviews,
Mm.
one is with a British philosopher who traveled with a humanitarian convoy around the frontline towns, all the way from sort of the southern front all the way up to the north in Kharkiv. So that I think is about sort of 15 hours or so at least driving. And he said that literally you could drive for hour after hour after hour. And what really stood out is if you saw a house that was actually not completely destroyed, you could literally drive for hours and not see a roof or a house intact. And I think the sheer scale of that is not something people appreciate. But also, if you think of Soledar, Vuhledar, Bakhmut, the industry that they had there, and of course Mariupol with the steelworks, the industry, the mines, all of these have been utterly poisoned. And it's a question as to whether any of them will become economically viable to recover or fix, because the sheer scale of destruction and despoilation of Russia. And it's truly horrific. And another interview that just went on the channel last night is with a man who has been in Ukraine since 2019, demining. It's an incredibly dangerous job, day in, day out, removing and neutralizing dozens upon dozens of Russian mines. And he was describing the sheer scale of the mining operation. I mean, it's horrific beyond imagination.
Thank you. You're right. And just before our interview, I was watching some historical, like chronicles videos on YouTube, and Ukraine suffered greatly. It's one of the countries that suffered most during the Second World War, and it was actually the theater of the Second World War to a great extent. It did not reach Russia even, I mean, like that deep. But there was one video with lots of comments below it. It was Kharkiv during the times of Nazi occupation of Kharkiv. And there were lots of notices, German soldiers everywhere, people running to avoid meeting them. But the city was incomparably um, Like, I mean, today it looks much worse and the level of destruction is much higher. And there were lots of questions below this video of Ukrainians. Why is it so? Like, and one of the answers that is interesting to think from this psychological point of view, philosophical point of view. Of course, Nazi crimes, they are awful. I think nothing can be compared to that. But they plan to occupy and use these territories. That's why they tried to save industrial objects and other make people work on them like slaves. But the plan was as it is. And what Russia does, because they say, we've got Avdiivka, we've got Mariupol. When they enter these cities, there is nothing left there at all. They wanted to rename and return back communist names to the streets of Avdiivka, but there are no streets in Avdiivka. There is nothing left. Not a single school, not a single factory, not a single shop, not a single street, not a single house. So this is a very vivid illustration why Russia is in Ukraine, to destroy Ukraine. Once again, they don't need our factories. They don't need our mines. They simply want us not to exist. And the plan is to kill active, democratic Ukrainians, and then the rest that will remain will join Russian army and start marching deeper into Europe.
And this was, I mean, there were two things that stood out in the Putin interview with Tucker Carlson for me. I mean, most of it was absolutely awful and it was rubbish and mostly made up. And
Confess,
I don't know if you
confess,
put yourself through that. I mean, I don't know if you watched the
did
whole
you
thing.
drink wine after watching it or some whiskey?
No, I had a shower first because I felt sort of dirty,
Yeah, how
watching it.
did you detoxify
That's right.
yourself?
Detoxify, and then I had a whiskey. Yeah, absolutely. Um, but there were two things that came out. I mean, first of all was the sheer outrageous lie that Poland started World War II and provoked the Nazis into attacking them. Well, that's an extraordinary, um, window into Putin's mind and how he thinks. The other one, which I thought was Putin, who, sometimes Putin, all his minions will lie and lie and lie and lie, and then Putin will just come out with sometimes a truth. He's a little more off script sometimes than his propagandists. And he said that the roots of the war, the cause of the war, is 2014. So really, this is all about Maidan. This is all about the freedoms and the fact that Ukrainians refused to be slave people, refused to, you know, ignore their own volia, ignore their own sort of desire to shape their future and live under somebody else's code. This, I think, is what angers Putin more than anything else. And he sort of let slip that this is the real reason for the war.
I rarely advertise my videos, but I greatly encourage people to watch one of my latest videos in Discover Ukraine series where I speak about Maidan, because Russian trolls and Russian propagandists, they very often use it as Maidan was a coup, Maidan was a reason, when Maidan was actually a reaction to slow annexation of Ukraine according to the plan as they did with Belarus. That's why they put a totally pro-Russian and controlled by Putin fake president, who started strengthening and selling everything of Ukrainian infrastructure, energy infrastructure, big factories, everything to Russian oligarchs. And we had, like, I think it's a very good illustration and fact that will work with even with people who do not want to dig deep into Ukrainian politics and modern history. At the moment of Maidan, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, the Minister of Education of Ukraine, the head of SBU were Russian citizens. Russian citizens in the independent Ukraine. How do you explain that? Can you imagine like a French minister, a French citizen minister in your? No, it's not okay. It's illegal. In Ukraine, we don't have double citizenships, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not allowed
Equally,
according
we
to
don't
Ukraine.
make spies our politicians either. You wouldn't have the
Plus,
head of MI5
Yanukovych
as that.
escaped after this, escaped to Russia. Minister of Education escaped to Russia. Minister of Education that actually did everything to eliminate Ukrainian language from Crimea. He escaped to Russia. Then he was nominated as a deputy for Единая Россия. What else do you need? What other proofs do you need, guys? People who shot Ukrainian patriots on Maidan were partially from Russian FSB and other services and weapons, and like this kind of management of protests was definitely delegated from Russia.
And the rumor
So
is that the Berkut, which is, yes, as you say, very much Russian inspired and with deep connections, that they actually, the sort of ammunition and weaponry required
exactly, it
was
was
smuggled
Russian.
in Red Cross, Red Cross vehicles, is one of the rumors.
Maybe
Yeah.
like in Ukraine, I know lots of people often ask me about Red Cross and like giving money to Red Cross, but it's not the favorite organization in Ukraine, just like United Nations now, like there are lots of things. They try to preserve their neutrality, but for Ukraine, and I think taking into account all these crimes, war crimes that Russia commits and that are so visible, it's just like being neutral to Nazi Germany, like saying, "Ooh, it's impossible. It's impossible because this is a very vivid and obvious evil, and you cannot be neutral in this case."
Well, we have to mention a couple of other things. The two other topics I want to touch upon, both of which I think are difficult ones. I mean, let's start with we'll get around to Navalny and we'll probably do that later. But the sort of I want to tackle that from the point of view of the weakness of opposition in Russia and the fact that in the West, people endlessly put their hope in the Russian opposition and have completely unrealistic, I think, expectations of what is possible there. But let's start with another narrative which the Kremlin has been really working for more than a year to try and create division, dissent within Ukraine, and that is to exaggerate and create narratives around the relationship between General Zaluzhny and Zelenskyy. Now, obviously, that has now resulted in a change of military leadership. And the military people I speak to say we shouldn't get too hung up on that. It's quite normal in times of war for strategy to change, leadership to change. And someone who's been in that job for 2 years, it's incredibly, and even prior to that, because of course he was in charge of the armed forces prior to full-scale invasion. It's physically incredibly exhausting thing to do. So it's perfectly normal to shake things up and try different things. But again, the media get absolutely fixated on personalities, relationships, the trivia of individuals arguing, that's the kind of narrative and story they look for. And we know that Russian propaganda has put a huge amount of effort into trying to weaponize these so-called disputes. What's the Ukrainian perspective on the recent changes?
Well, I have to be honest. Of course, General Zaluzhny is very much loved and trusted in Ukraine, and it is actually unusual how, in times of war, when people are very stressed and typically quarrel with each other, he united everyone, and there is no doubt in his professionalism and everything that he did. But it was also obvious, and it was in the air for a couple of months already, that this change is possible. And it was accepted normally by Ukrainian government, by General Zaluzhny, people around him. So it was not a quarrel, it was not a scandal, it was not something like that. There are a lot of reasons, starting from being simply tired, physically exhausted, because what Russia forgets to mention when highlighting Ukrainian problems is that during this time they've changed their commanders for like 10 times. And another question that we can ask any Russian journalist or propagandist, where is Gerasimov? You know, people on my channel often ask that, but instead of answering their own
Surovikin.
questions,
What's happened to
yeah, sort of,
Surovikin,
yeah,
Prigozhin? Where are they?
and Sokolov, this admiral that disappeared after the destruction of the headquarters of the Black Sea Navy in Crimea, and now he's fired, but obviously he was on fire in that headquarters. And but Ukraine
Spending
is,
more time with his family, maybe,
yeah,
you know.
in hell.
Yeah.
Um, and like Ukraine is an open country, is a democratic country, and you can see everything what is happening here, all the doubts, all the things. So in general, so our society accepted this change, and the new General Serhiy, he is known to Ukrainian public. He's responsible for a number of successful operations. When we saw this change of commanders and General Zaluzhny received the Hero of Ukraine, they were hugging with Zelensky. Of course, there are lots of people who are huge fans of Zaluzhny and they want him to become, I don't know, a president in future or something. So they were even disappointed seeing this hugging and such great cooperation with Zelensky. Some will say it's politeness, but politeness is to shake hands. It's enough to be present or shake hands. And they were like hugging, there are lots of photos. So I think that in general, Zelensky remains an active participant of the top Ukrainian decision makers in the military. Syrskyi is not someone new, and changes in the general staff and the heads of various uh, groups is greatly supported. And I've read a lot of positive comments. And you know, sometimes this managers, if it's possible to say, like top officers, are more even important than the face of the general commander. What is true, Zaluzhny has charisma, and he is a very archetypal Ukrainian, like military man. But I think it was a normal change, and you will not see any disagreement or protests in Ukraine. But any change is always a turbulent time, and of course, Russia uses it as a part of their informational psychological operations.
I think that that's absolutely true, and it's important for the media to put things in context and not be so alarmist and not focus on personalities and trivia. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work that way. Now, of course, we turn to one of the big topics, which is Alexei Navalny. Um, but again, let's try to tackle this from some sort of slightly different angles rather than usual ones. I mean, the first thing that surprised me is not that he died. I think it was almost inevitable that he wasn't going to make it out of the Russian prison system, given the unbelievably harsh conditions, both physically and psychologically. I think the chances of him making out, ever getting out of prison, were low. In fact, it would only if Putin falls or dies was there going to be any chance of that happening, and that's a worry because there are some interesting characters. I think Ilyashin and Kormorzar are they don't have his stature, but they are in some ways probably more democratic. And of course, their safety is very much at risk there. But what struck me about it, the story, was the reaction again of the sort of press and even many experts who initially are taking their cue from the Russian prison system announcement. He has died. And we know from reporting on Ukrainian problems where Russia has killed people, and the press says people have died. You know, they don't mention the aggressor, they don't mention the act itself, they stay away from any language that actually apportions blame, even when the blame is 100% absolutely incontrovertible. And I think it's the same here. Anyone who has studied Putin over the years will immediately have thought it's highly likely that he's killed, murdered, not that he somehow collapsed or whatever. And yet it seems that the cynicism that I think is required to analyze any action of the Kremlin is still absent in the media. And even many experts are saying, oh dear, he's died, he died. They're not putting the context in here that every single one of Putin's effective opponents, and Politkovska and Nemtsov, etc., they're all murdered. So they don't give the probability. No, the probability is that he was killed. And then you need to ask, well, why was he killed? Well, the Munich Security Conference is on. Putin feels strong, not weak. He feels he's in a position of strength because the West is not supporting Ukraine in the manner that it needs to. It's not reinforcing its red lines. The obvious conclusion here is to say the probability is he's killed, but the media is epically weak in this respect. So I don't know what your sense on that is.
I so much enjoy our conversations because you are always able to address a problem from a very important angle, sometimes missed by many people. And I will answer by quoting Peter Pomerantsev, whom we interviewed for a documentary, Great Russian Lies, that will soon air on Ukrainian state television. And we asked him about one case that when Russians destroyed Kakhovka Dam with that terrorist act, and everyone in the world knew it coming, which is similar to the death of Navalny. I even compared it to the title of my favorite Colombian writer, Garcia Marquez, who once wrote a story, a death, a chronicle of a death foretold before or something. I know the Ukrainian translation, but like the death that everyone knew about before it actually happened. So it may be compared like everyone knew Navalny will not survive, will not live if an asteroid does not kill Putin in the bunker. The same about Kakhovka Dam. There were lots of news. It was obvious results of intelligence services and so on. And then when it happens, what do we see on the headlines? Ukraine claims Russia. Russia says no. And then investigation needed. And it was so, like, I remember I felt really bad that days because you see this epic evil, you realize how many people died, how many animals die. You realize this is just like a super crime, a condensed crime. And then you have your friends who say, well, we have to check, maybe it was you. We are not able to destroy our land with such like evil, honestly. You may not like Zelensky, you may not like me, you may not like, I don't know, anyone else, but we are not evil, just like, and it was very painful. It was just like doubled pain. And then it was on the headlines everywhere. A couple of days later, there was news everywhere that Russia is to blame, Russia is responsible. But this very first time, it was like, we don't know. And we asked Pomerantsev Peter what he thinks about this and why is it so when obviously the majority of this like journalists, they had a clue. And he gave an answer that may be very close to the truth, and I don't like, because I don't like this kind of truth. He said that it is very possible that witnessing such biblical evil, people feel themselves weak because they are afraid, they are not brave enough, or they are really weak. Let's be open, and they cannot do anything about it. So they escape in the version of reality where it is not 100% confirmed, and then they don't have to react. And it may be that this is also the choice of these opinion leaders now in the democratic world, that they are openly afraid of Putin. They don't have a
Yes.
plan. We feel
Yeah.
that in Ukraine, they don't have a plan. and they
You've
don't know
just
what to
predicted the
do.
title of my next video, actually.
Uh,
I was going to say, um, Putin has instilled fear. Putin has instilled fear in people, not just Russians. I mean, being a state of fear is something historically, Russians have always had, but he's managed to impose a state of fear on Western leaders and thinkers and military planners in some respects as well, or geopoliticians as well. Extraordinary trick.
I often allow myself to say it that one of the main messages that Putin uses inside Russia is that West is weak. And I don't want him to be right.
He
Um,
he understands, though. I think he
he feels
senses
that he
weakness like
tests
a
them, yes. And uh, I do understand that before the start of invasion, when all of these intelligence services reported it's possible to Ukraine, we also know that the majority of these superpowers, they advised Zelensky to leave, or they had plans, or they started building plans. What will we do after the collapse of Ukraine? How will we support the government in the exile? What programs we can launch? No one had a plan that we withstand. And when we did that, it was a great surprise and inspiration to the world, and the world started supporting Ukraine, though in the minds of the majority it was impossible. They just didn't have this option, like that blitzkrieg of Putin fails. But until now, 2 years of Ukrainian resilience, they did not build this plan. What do we do? The more realistic version was just the collapse of Ukraine, and then talking to Putin. Maybe it all finishes here, when it's not. It's not. I know that many do want to hide in their like beds with blankets, thinking, "Oh, this crazy lady is trying to frighten us, but it's just her problem, and she wants to be emotional, and she wants to reach us with these things." But no, guys, no, I had just the same feeling as you do. I realized, no, it's impossible. It's irrational. He will not attack. He will lose. He will not get us. Come on. Even if he occupies all the country, we will all hate him. This will be decades of partisan wars, blah, blah, blah. But he is crazy. He is irrational. He says, I'm ready to destroy the world because who needs the world without Russia? Can you imagine a French president saying that, or King Charles saying that? No, that's absurd. That's impolite. They would be judged. They would have so many problems, and Putin does not have. What I'm also very much afraid that if Putin would agree to stop, for example, or will say something that democratic audience will like, people will say, "Oh my God, he changed. I am so much afraid of this too. That any more or less normal gesture from his side will forgive him genocide in Ukraine, killings of hundreds of thousands, and that will be the greatest betrayal ever."
And the same applies to anyone who will replace Putin. I think it's even more problematic that somebody who brutalizes his own people and doesn't tackle the sort of colonial imperial mindset will still be embraced by the West just for this idea of peace. Whereas maybe we'll sort of end on that in a minute. Peace does not mean peace if Russia maintains control of Donbass and Crimea. For the people who are there, it means torture, lawlessness, oppression, waking up, not knowing what terrible thing may befall you. It's the sheer unpredictability of living in the sort of Russian world. And I made this argument with actually it was part of the conversation I had with Ilya Ponomarev. I was saying that people are arguing, is Russia Stalinist yet or is it not? I say, well, you're asking the wrong question, because the occupied territory of Donbass is Stalinist already. So it's only a matter of time for that to leak into Russia proper. Belarus is already there, and the worst experiment in neo-Stalinism is the territory of Donbass.
I will be brutally honest today on your channel. I do have some good friend subscribers and I value their opinion. And sometimes they may tell me things that are not very sweet to my Ukrainian ear, saying that, well, if we will be brutally honest, maybe lots of people far away from Ukraine are ready to sacrifice Ukrainians because we don't know you that well. It was bright, it was good, but who cares? We don't need it to grow into the Third World War when it actually does. And they have this hope that by sacrificing they will solve a problem when they will actually uh, give green light. It repeats the same thing it was in 1938. The same thing we did with Crimea in 2014 when we were advised not to escalate. Uh, let's be honest, sanctions do not work the way we expected. Russia is not collapsing economically. They have switched into this military economy that is of great help to Russia. It provides lots of explanations to their internal questions and problems, mobilizes their society, provides lots of working places. And for them, war is good at this moment. And occupying all of Ukraine, they will not stop here. Why would they? Because of NATO, come on. I'm very much afraid that one more year and no one will be afraid of NATO at all.
There's a real
They
risk
will
there.
find new excuses for not using the article or saying something. Um,
Anders Puck Nielsen made this argument, and I think it's quite an interesting one, which is Putin is not going to suddenly invade Poland because he knows there'll be a fight on his hands, which he's not going to win. I mean, Poles are, I think, famous for arguing amongst themselves, but what will unite them like nothing else is having Russia invade their territory. Now, he's much more likely to take sneaky tactics, annexing the Arctic, using space-based weapons, and that's the one that came up in the US last week. Far more likely that he'll do something as Anders Puck Nielsen said, what if he was to take parts of Lapland where almost nobody lives? I mean, would we risk Third World War for a couple of 100 kilometers of
no.
tundra? Yeah. So this sort of salami slicing is likely the tactic that he's going to use. And we don't seem to have built our systems to be able to enforce red lines or deal with sort of hybrid incremental warfare.
And it's extremely important to know that there are some borderlines, red flags, and people react. And when bullies like Putin see, well, just look at it. He invaded Crimea. What happened to Russia? Nothing. Lots of international companies start adding Crimea to Russian map, and that's it. Some sanctions, some other stuff, but they had Olympics. They had everything is okay, um, and they gain a lot, and they will get lots of Ukrainians to join their new army too. There will be that's what they practice on temporarily occupied territories, and that's what they actually did in 1939 when we forgot about the cooperation of communist Soviet Union and Nazi Germany for 2 years. And I feel very weird at this feeling of deja vu when you see the world make these mistakes and it repeats them.
Absolutely. It's terrifying. Well, I've got two more questions. One is I won't apologize. One is about Navalny, but again, it's a slightly different angle than everyone else. And then the last question, just to make sure we end on Ukraine, is, the last question is going to be what needs to happen in order to ensure that the Maidan values, Maidan ethics, as Dr. Sasha Dovzhi calls them, aren't snuffed out. What do we need to do to ensure they survive? But let's get the Navalny question in first. And in watching his documentary film, which is sort of interesting, and it is quite interesting the way all that happened. But what struck me and what I started to look at online, which I wasn't aware of, is, well, let's take Navalny's politics. He flirted with the far right. He said some extremely racist and Islamophobic things when he was flirting with extreme elements of Russian politics. He never clearly dissociated himself with that. In fact, he was on record as saying that you have to work with everybody, right? He says, I'm not going to exclude any partnerships there. So there's deeply problematic areas of his of that. There's the Crimea isn't a sandwich, etc. There's the interview with I can't quite remember his name, but the guy who ran Echo Moskwy, and of course, when put on the spot, Navalny was often not able to give clear answers, and he got irritated. And there are issues there with various aspects of his personality. He did come later to write some fairly clear statements that Ukraine must return to 1991 borders. But that's not what I want to tackle. What I didn't realize is his father was Ukrainian. And Navalny was apparently brought up and able to speak possible Ukrainian, which I completely unaware of. So his politics is one thing. But what struck me in looking at him in prison is that he had the bearing of someone who was not behaving like a slave. He had the bearing and manner of somebody, even in prison, who believed himself to be a free person and behaved as a free person. I think that's kind of interesting because every Ukrainian, it's not unusual, most Ukrainians will behave in that way. It's not unusual for that, but it is unusual in Russia for somebody to have that kind of swagger and bearing of a free person. I wonder whether his family, who apparently were very politicized by Chernobyl and the experience of that and the lies that were told, we can criticize his politics, but I wonder whether it wasn't a little bit of him, a little bit of his character that was a little bit Ukrainian. I don't know what you think.
Thank you. My editor-in-chief of the daily Ukrainian newspaper, The Day, actually told me that we have to speak about the Ukrainian heritage of Navalny to persuade the world that even those rare cases of visible Russian opposition are Ukrainian. So if there is hope for Ruski Mir, it will be brought by Ukrainians. And I also have lots of good Russians on the channel who will comment like, after you win, come and liberate us. I do know about Navalny
That's
and
not
he
your job, though. That's not Ukrainians' job, They're going to do
exactly
it for themselves.
like we're a bit tired, guys. But Navalny is Ukrainian, and I also know that some of his relatives, like they remained in Ukraine, and one of his relatives was tortured and killed in Bucha. Perhaps it's not the closest one, but I mean a person definitely related to him by blood. I am proud that I did not know much about Navalny. I, of course, knew about him. I watched the documentary, read some of his articles. I know his quote about Crimea is not a sandwich. From my personal, just like ordinary citizen perspective, he was not that deep into philosophy, ideology. It was more a political PR project.
Yeah, he was
Uh,
a real political animal, wasn't he? Not an
yeah,
intellectual in that
and
sense.
deep inside myself, I'm even glad that I did not know that much about him, because I and the generation like me and lots of people younger than me, they are very much out of Russian. And we don't know the music, the singers, the sportsmen, the politicians, honestly, the streets, the cities. And it's not ignorance or lack of IQ or something, it's decolonization or like freedom. We had too much of that. So I was actually glad that I'm not into Navalny, or I don't see him as a solution. But at the same time, tackling with all these questions and knowing that, well, he is not that insane as Putin, and he is the only more or less possible opposition. It was interesting to learn more about him. And after your video, I also watched a video of Vlad Wexler giving the analysis of Navalny, where I do not agree with everything, but there was one feature that struck me and I totally agree with now. And he also speaks about this very not Russian and very vivid feeling of freedom that was with Navalny, in Navalny, around Navalny during all of this years in prison. And when you look at him, the way he speaks, and that's a message to people who don't know him much, just look at him in prison looking really bad and compare him to Putin in the most expensive coat, in the most comfortable environment. Putin is not free. He is a person with lots of complexes. I don't know if it's okay in English.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
it's the Ukrainian word, like.
it works. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are lots of things that he's not free. That's what his hatred comes from, like the suppression of lots of evil instincts, problems. I don't know. And Navalny was free. This freedom was with him, and that's perhaps the answer why he returned back to Russia when it was obvious they will kill him. For me, it was just like question number one: why would he return if even Agent Angela Merkel asked him not to? And that's perhaps this freedom. And I am proud, and I no more doubt there is something on the DNA level, on the synapses in our brain, that we value freedom. And those Ukrainians who are ready to sacrifice their lives, uh, it's not just a miracle, it is our need. It's just like oxygen. There are certain moments when you start lacking this oxygen of freedom and you are ready to act. And you don't want this life if it's like that. I remember, like, when I was a teenager, approximately, or something, I had like spells of anxiety and other phobias and things like that. And it took so much of my energy and my brain. And you know how it all cured, not with the help of any medication or conversations or psychotherapy. I got tired. One day in spring, I woke up and I realized, oh my God, I'm so tired of being afraid of this. I don't want a life like that. I want a normal life. Let it all like happen what may. Like, and that's the Ukrainian attitude to lack of freedom. There are some moments when you're silent, you're waiting, you're hoping, you're praying, and then you start acting. And even understanding that you may die, you accept this because you don't want life like that.
I think that's
So
so incredibly
maybe,
important. Yeah.
maybe deep down inside there was something Ukrainian, but he was very intoxicated by Russian imperial character. And unfortunately, there are thousands of Ukrainians, and there are thousands of Ukrainians throughout Russian imperial history who helped, if not designed, Russian Empire.
This is another topic which I think would be interesting to explore and examine. We did a video on Karelov, and we talked about Repin and others, and there are people who didn't necessarily embrace Russian imperialism, but in order to advance their careers, had to become part of that system, and in some cases retained a significant component of their Ukrainianness. But I think
Oh,
it's a fascinating topic.
do invite me for such a conversation one day, because even if we look at the time of Moscow Tsardom, when Peter the Great, or even a couple of decades before that, decided to rebrand Moscow Tsardom into Russia, stealing Kiev Rus and other stuff. He had lots of designers from Ukraine, like Feofan Prokopovich or others, who were helping develop and manipulate. And we are guilty of that. And some people say that all of these smart, evil things in Russia, unfortunately, were designed by like Ukrainians who betrayed their heritage or who got money, power, and ambition.
That's definitely a topic for an entire episode. Well,
Yeah.
let's end this one on taking that theme of freedom, the idea that freedom is oxygen, and without it, it's suffocating. And I think so many Ukrainians I've spoken to have said that that is not a state of existence that they want to be part of. And I think those that were under occupation in Donbass, who had a strong Ukrainian identity and had that sense of will, volia, and freedom, many of them actually left and had to leave because they couldn't live in that. The last question here is what needs to change in order for that spirit to survive and thrive, for Ukraine to get back to its full sovereign borders and to have an actual victory? What needs to change in terms of Western action and Western mindset in order to support Ukrainian freedom, its survival, and chance to grow in the future?
I will give you an illustration. After questioning a survey in the European Union, today the results were published that like 10% of EU population is fully confident that Ukraine is able to win and defeat Russia. And I received lots of emails with this information. Uh, of course, I read that on Ukrainian news. I do not always understand why do you send me like that, what kind of like message. And there was one email with additional comments like you have to concentrate and to start persuading us, work on that, and also work on the US, like with the, of course, exaggerating my possibilities, but persuade us that Ukraine can win was the main message. And I had this feeling to compare it with a person, like, I don't know, a doctor or a family member asking a cancer patient or someone to persuade that, like, oh, do persuade that you will be okay. And we don't have enough money for your medication. We will not give you what you need, but we will have cold drinks. And please demonstrate. um, I am ready, and many other Ukrainians are ready to demonstrate resilience and bravery. And we actually do it daily by staying in our country, fighting, joining army, collecting money, volunteering, simply drinking coffee in the cafes that can be destroyed with missiles, and fighting with the largest country in the world, with a very strong army, knowing that many other beautiful countries would have surrendered much quicker. And we are protecting not only us, but democracy and countries that are near us. And I feel that, like, for example, our Baltic friends, they know that. Finland knows that. Sweden is getting ready for war because they realize it's evil. Russian evil is not limited to the territory of Ukraine, Crimea, or anything else. And at the same time, we also sometimes want cheer up, support, because it's really difficult to have real war, to continue reforms, to join the European Union, to hold lots of informational campaigns, and then like to live your ordinary life. So I think it is extremely important for people who want to support good to look around, to look realistically in a very sober way what is happening, what is Russia doing to this world, and to understand that such evil, it has to be punished, because if it's not, then we are not like humans. We are not even, like, that's the failure of democracy, that's the failure of freedom. And we do want to escape from bad thoughts. But once again, it is just like with a disease. If you don't like your symptoms, you cannot escape from them. You have to start working and fighting for your life. And that's what we may say Europe is doing at the moment. But if Ukraine falls, it will have consequences in Asia, in Africa, in Americas. So my message is open your eyes, guys, and don't let your inner desire to hide. prevent you from making the necessary steps. And these necessary steps are to continue supporting Ukraine and to fight against Russia, because now, together with North Korea, with Iran, with China, they are growing stronger.
I think that's so incredibly important. Hopefully, through the work you're doing on your channel and through all the pro-Ukrainian YouTubers, commentators, writers, historians, experts, I think all have been relatively consistent now in their messages. Unfortunately, it's a huge effort to actually get the political establishment, their advisors, to really understand. And there are lots of competing, sort of noisy opinions there that we have started to document. A lot of Russian narratives are percolating through. But I hope the work that you do, I hope the work of this channel and many others actually have a difference, actually change minds, and will result in 2024 being the year that we push back on Russia. And as Lieutenant General Ben Hodges said earlier in the week at the Munich Security Conference, now is the time we need to body slam Russia. We need to give them a sharp, full shock and get them to withdraw and understand that they cannot win on the territory of Ukraine.
You're right. And by the way, if you look at any case when Ukraine gets the support it needs, it uses it on 100, if not 200% effectively. So honestly, it's not that you're failing in supporting Ukraine, because whenever we have this like missiles, jets, we always demonstrate great results. So we can defeat Russia. We must defeat Russia. And it's vital not to postpone, not to wait, not to doubt at this moment, because there are some decisive moments in history. And in the Second World War, anything could happen. It was also a possibility, but we've managed, and I hope we will manage this time too.
I hope so too. Anna, thank you so much on this, the second anniversary of Russia's brutal invasion. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!